My first Q&A from my friend, Pencils and Polyhedrals. So the most noble thing I've ever done as a PC, I imagine when you say that you mean sort of like the most virtuous and not like the most nobility thing I've ever done. So I think just objectively, ending a brewing civil war in the kingdoms of Gildor in my brother's homebrew campaign, he uses Gildor for something else, is probably just the most objective good I've ever done in any D&D game. You know, you have like almost 6 countries basically ready to start killing each other to see who gets to rule this realm. And we basically sat them all down in a Council of Elrond and was like, stop that. And it totally worked. And then probably to answer the other possibility of a question of anything I've done that's like a noble. Basically anything that my elf wizard Calderon did as I played through the Horde of the Dragon Queen. You know, he was not above using his station as a prince. Do you have any idea who my father is? But yeah, what's the most noble thing you've ever done as a PC? The fabled Nexus has a weird problem, but kind of my thing is trying to help people out. I mean, I don't mind if that's my thing. Who doesn't need an extra thing? Spicy. So basically, the fabled Nexus has a player at the table who makes all the plans and basically gets shit done. DMs, we all use these players to great effect. But it sounds like the other players at the table sort of keep quiet, but then bellyache when they don't like the plan that gets, done, but they weren't part of the planning process. So 2 pieces of advice. First, some people just want to be invited to play soccer. So talk to your planner player and just get them on board that before they announce what their plan is, they can just sort of look at the rest of the group and ask for buy-in. Like, does anybody have an idea? Because the very act of proposing, if anybody else has an idea, well, sort of put it out in the open. Do you guys have something you want to say? If not, cool. Then let me plan. And then if it continues, talk about it at the table with the rest of the players. Just be willing to come out and say it. Hey, guys, you guys weren't part of the planning process and you had every opportunity. Be honest and kind. Dragon X. Thanks for your comment, dude. So I wanted to respond to your comment for 2 reasons. 1, you're way too hard on yourself, 100% of the time. And as one of your biggest fans, I would kindly like to ask you to lighten up on one of my friends, which is you. Number 2, dude, naming is hard. And one piece of advice that I forgot to put in that video is actually really important, and here it is for you. Something that I do to help come up with cool names that people may not necessarily associate with a certain thing and feel like it's a ripoff is I'll look at stuff that I like and I'll find the name of a place and I'll give that name from a place to a person and vice versa. Or like the name of a weapon from something, I'll give that to a place. It changes it up enough and it totally flips the context. And it always works! As an example, in the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, one of the first elves we ever meet is Gildor. And Gildor is this elf traveling to the Greyhaven. He meets with Frodo and tells him basically that his quest is doomed and laughs at him. A gross oversimplification. But I love that name. So in my campaign setting, the last great city of the elves is called Gildor. It has this cool name, but it's actually the name of a specific elf. So don't be afraid to rip off stuff. Happy Monday, Kev Doggy Dog. So thank you so much for your question. Those shorter videos really do a good job, and I wanted to try to be as succinct as possible. But your question does brook answering. So for one-on-one battles, the reason I like to reroll initiative is because it keeps the tension up. If initiative remains static, turn to turn, it becomes a little bit more predictable and it's easy to tune out. That goes for the player who's fighting and for the players who might just be watching. By rerolling initiative, you keep the player on their toes and they can't plan too far ahead. If initiative goes in their favor, they might have 2 turns all to themselves to just do a ton of damage or set themselves up. But if initiative goes against them, then it goes for the bad guy. Because a lot of times these one-on-one fights can just turn into taking turns hitting each other with a stick. So the very act of rolling initiative creates this ever tension. What's going to happen? Who's going to go next? And that can be a lot of fun, and the last time I did it in Eberron, the whole party was captivated watching this fight. I might do a follow-up video talking about why I wouldn't do a skill challenge for this. At least I wouldn't offer it unless a player suggested it, but that depends if people want it. Top of the morning to you, Dutch. So Dutch asks a interesting question, and I'm not sure I know the answer to it. Something that I think I should say out loud is it's basically impossible to diagnose any one table without, being there. There's so many factors and things that I can't account for, but I can't try to help. It'd be wrong of me not to try to help. So here it goes. I think I've run into this sort of thing, kind of. So most helpful advice right out of the gate, talk to the other player. I sort of see this akin to like picking up someone else's mini and telling them where to move in combat. It's just bad table manners. Maybe they like everybody else's character more than their own. Something else I suspect is that person might actually in their heart want to be a DM. I find people who are like really hardcore storyteller players who are really focused on what everybody else should do. They kind of need to break that habit because nobody likes it. But that comes from a place of wanting to control the action, tell a story. It's a DM habit. So, ask why they're doing that. Tell them not to do that. You control your own character, nobody else can. and then recommend they run a game. The perfect D&D setup. That's a tough one, but I'm not one to back down from a challenge. So let's do this. If I have an infinite wish list for a perfect D&D setup, I would start by just having us be back at the table. I've taken every advantage I can with remote play, but nothing really beats the energy you get at playing all at the same table. And I would want to be a quality table, like real nice, handcrafted mahogany or something. It could be like a legit gaming table, but it doesn't have to be. And my player number would be 5. 4 is sort of the magic number, but 5, I like 5 because it's good to have a tiebreaker. And it's just easier to design encounters for 5 people. I'm very blessed. There's so many people in my life that I love playing with. But for whatever else is true, if I had to pick, I'd want to make sure that my 2 brothers are in my game. I have a twin brother and a little brother. And we've sort of been playing nonstop off and on since I was 11. It's not really the same without them. And then I'd want my own DJ, someone to run music for me, because I get super caught up in trying to make sure the music's perfect. I definitely want my brother's miniature collection, and I guess unlimited food and drinks. And I guess if I had to pick a setting, I'd run my homebrew, finally. Great question, Sage. Thank you. The best of the best setups. Obviously, this is super subjective, but I'm not one to back down from a challenge, Sage. So let's do this. My take on what my ideal best of the best D&D setup would be. But to start off, my ideal setup would be in person, back at the table. And it would be a big table, good long boy. And it would be made of wood. You said the best of the best, so I'm going to be very specific. Sturdy, handmade, wooden shit. I probably have 5 players. 5 is the magic number. 4, I think, really is the magic number, but 5 is just enough to break ties. And really, I'm blessed with so many people that I love to play with, like, in my life. But if I had to pick 3 people to make sure that they're in my game, it would be my 2 brothers. I have a twin brother and I'm a twin brother. And we basically been playing together non-stop since I was 11. It's not the same without them. And while we're working on it, and my own personal D&D DJ. A worthy question, Ryan. I like to do this because it keeps initiative more interesting round to round. If the player can rely that whenever the enemy goes, they're going to go right afterwards, it can get kind of stale because it can tend to keep things going at a regular pace that becomes predictable. If the player can't rely that they're always going to go right after the bad guy might get 2 rounds in a row. And similarly, the player might get 2 rounds in a row. It keeps things a little bit more interesting, forces them to pay attention round to round.